record on this. All right.
Got it.
So now the red tally light is on. We are officially begun. Welcome to Co-Gnosis, a podcast about how we know what we know. Today's interview, I'm not really sure what order she will be debuting at, but it'll be sometime in September. So right now, I would say welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself, and if you would, tell people how we know each other.
Hi, my name is Karina Miller, and I live in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a 6-year Navy veteran. I spent most of my time with Assault Craft Unit 4 out of Little Creek. It's a small unit where we work with a lot of Marines. That's usually my day-to-day life, is preparing equipment for Marines to go from the ship to the shore. So people, a lot of jokes about the Navy, right? Being the taxi for the Marine Corps, but hovercraft are the way the ship gets the Marines to the shore. So we hit the beach with them. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It can be hairy, but it's a lot of fun at the end of the day. Now I live in San Antonio, Texas with my 2 daughters. I've been here since 2009. It's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And it's been a roller coaster getting here. But you and I met, I believe I can't remember which, I'm always working on a project, but I know.
Yes.
I always have a project, but I remember we met at a collaborating space downtown.
Yes.
I don't remember how we connected though. How did we get to that?
I think I was cold calling. I was trying to figure, I had just lost a job and I was trying to stand up a business again. Like I've done this a number of times where I commit to a corporation or a group of individuals and I work really hard for them and then I get left with nothing and then I have to start my business again,
Yes.
So that is, I think, how we met. I was doing prospecting and I walked into that space and I think you were there. And so we kind of introduced ourselves and then we met at a different co-working space because we were talking about what would it take to start a magazine style show on social media, I think is probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I remember now. It all comes back to, and we've talked about so many things since then. It's just this journey, but I love entrepreneurship. It definitely, all of those mistakes, all of those, missteps led us to here. And I just couldn't be happier with where I am now. So I'm thankful because sometimes I learned what not to do and sometimes I learned what to do. And now it's like, okay, let me apply that. It's different when the shoe's on the other foot too.
Yeah, the old the Navy motto, adapt and overcome.
Yes.
And much the way simplify is a thing of the Marines, adapting and overcoming, I think, is a essential nature of a sailor.
Yes.
And you were, I was an untraditional sailor. I was actually an airman, right? So, the Navy has more airplanes than the Air Force does. But I was still in the Navy, as they say.
I know. I tell people all the time. I enlisted in the Navy, and I probably know less about the Navy than most people I know. And we're not in a Navy community here, San Antonio. Yeah. I think that was the other thing. It's like, you're Navy, I'm Navy. Oh my gosh, there are 2 of us.
Yeah.
Fighting each other, and we're not foremen.
Yeah, that's exactly. Because in the San Antonio, they're all corpsmen because they're all there for medical school, getting ready to go off to be Marine support or whatever. Yeah, I come from a family of Navy, at least in my immediate surroundings. I have my sister's brother was in the Navy. My sister's brother's wife was in the Navy. I was in the Navy. My wife was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. So we're Navy.
Wow. No, my dad was in the Navy, and he enlisted in the Navy right during Vietnam. He said, well, I know I'm gonna have to go, so I want to choose where I go.
Right.
And so he dropped out of school and just joined the Navy, thinking, it might be the lesser of the evils, right? No, my father was on the forestall. So when you watch the forestall fire videos, my father is there.
Wow. Yeah, every that training film that we watched probably in boot camp, where it's like every rule in the Navy is written in blood. And then they
Yes.
show you the forestall fire, and and you got John McCain's in the center of that whole thing. My father-in-law served on the forestall when they were in the Mediterranean. So it was after it had been repaired from all that damage. But he was on the forestall as a firefighter in the Med. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's a it's not a small world, but it's a small world when you put all the connections together, right?
My father was also not typical sailor either. He was with the Air Wing. So
Oh,
he was
really?
embarked for, so he was with VF-74, the Bedevilers, which suits him. Suits him, suits me too, probably. But you
Yeah.
mentioned the tag. So it's interesting, the Assault Craft Unit 4, our tag is above and beyond.
Ah,
And yeah, it's like, no, you can't, you have to go more. And I think that's why, we embark on the ship with the Marines, but we go beyond.
right.
So it makes
Well,
sense.
Well, you guys in Saving Private Ryan were the ones driving into the bullet spray to dump everybody off to take the beach. I mean, that was your job on a hovercraft. Were you a hovercraft pilot or mechanic? Like, what did you do
So,
on hovercraft?
so I was a mechanic. I was the crew. It's basically like a crew chief, but we're called deck engineers. And what's funny, it's funny you mentioned that movie, because I remember when that came, I had just gotten to the unit when that movie came out. And I went to see it. And as I'm watching, I'm thinking, oh, good, I can show my mom this. And this is the opening, right?
Mhm.
And I said, oh, I can show my mom what I do. And then I'm watching the guy who would most likely be doing my job, bullet, right there. And I said, maybe that wasn't maybe mom doesn't need to see this movie. But I remember that was a very surreal moment, like, oh, wait, what have I gone into? A lot of those moments. I remember that movie.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the theater and just having that realization of, oh, that's what I do.
And did you
He was
ever,
lowering the ramp. That's what he was doing. He was the guy who lowered the ramp, I think, if I
right?
remember correctly. And I thought, oh, that's my job. When we hit a beach, my job is to open the door and step out onto the deck and lower the ramp so the Marines can start offloading. And he was one of the first people, if not the first person in the movie to get shot.
Yeah. Well,
That's
so what is that when you made that realization, you were already in the Navy and already on your way to that unit?
I'm already there. Yeah, I was already assigned to that unit.
So had you
Already going
thought
through deck
about that?
engineering. I did. I did. That's when it was, well, but my attitude is, well, I'm here now. So what am I gonna do? Say, oh, I don't want to do this. I just have to make sure I learn how to avoid that.
Right. So did you ever have to do a beach landing in anger, under fire for real?
No, I didn't. Thank God. We did hit some imminent danger. So we were in those areas, but luckily we were never fired upon. There were definitely a few missions that I was part of that also had some very real moments.
Mm-hmm.
And where I thought, oh, this could be bad, but I tend to kind of shut that out. So I think even if we had, I would have just checked out and just focused on what I needed to do, because I can't worry about that, right? That's not my job. My
Right.
job is to get these Marines off. So if we were ever in a situation where we were taking fire, I would have just I just have to do what I know how to do and uncrag these Humvees or tanks or whatever we're offloading. And I'm just gonna focus on that. And they're good at what they do, and I'll just let them do their job, and I just handle my own. But my service weapon was an M60, which makes me laugh too, because it's the biggest gun and I'm the smallest person. So no, luckily we didn't have to do any of that. At least I didn't, but we were in those situations. Luckily we didn't have to engage though. So
That's
that was a blessing. But it was enough. It was enough to know that it was there.
right.
It was
Yeah.
there.
So there's a level of compartmentalization that it's not to worry about the thing that's happened, right?
I can't control it.
Yeah. So you just got to work on the thing that you have. That's the thing that us veterans, I think, learn in the service, is that literally hell can be breaking loose around us,
Mhm.
but we're
But
going
I
to
think
do
that's
our
why we're
job.
so specifically trained. We're trained to not even, I didn't even have to think about
Right.
what I was supposed to do. I just knew this is my job. And then you know that everyone else is also doing their job. You're not worried. I think, and it's a big thing, right? As transitioning is a huge deal. And I think that's what happens when we come out of the service. I'm trained to do this, and I'm not trained to think about what everybody else is doing, at least at my level. I'm sure as you get up to, I made it to E5, so I'm sure as you get up, then, but you're in a different view looking down and seeing it, but you're not in it having to do it, hopefully. On
Yeah.
our craft, if something went wrong, we only have one mechanic, but it wasn't as if the rest of the crew wouldn't help if it was, a dire situation where we really needed to get out of there, or something was really broken and it was more than I could handle by myself. The other crew members are able to step in, but typically they have their own job to do. The craft master has to be, driving the boat. He has to be focused on that. The engineer is the one I communicate with, because he's got the console and he's telling me, okay, I'm getting a low level reading over here. Go see what's going on. The navigator's obviously navigating. And then we have the load master who's responsible for all of the cargo on deck. So he has to make sure everything is balanced. And he's also the visual nav. So everyone has too much to do to really be able to help me that much. I have to know what I'm doing, but they train you. We are trained to just go in and do it. So, there was
Right.
never a situation that I didn't feel prepared for.
That's
That's a
great.
good thing. That's what I love about the Navy, is that I know I was trained well.
Yeah, and you can always step up and get another certification to add to your eval. Um, you know, but even in the Navy, the 80-20 principle was still there. There were times where I was doing a lot of work and I was watching a lot of people sitting around. So, but their job wasn't the job that I was doing. So they
Right.
were sitting around, right, while I was doing what I was doing, right?
You
Uh,
usually don't want touching your stuff, especially not because back then we were assigned, that was my boat. And I would prefer no one come and don't touch anything over here. Just leave my stuff alone, because, next thing that they would take our engines out, they would come back and they would put the solenoid valve on the back. It's like, okay, then I have to go in there and fix it. Like, just don't touch it. Send it back. So I put everything in its place, because it's hot and I'm having to stick my hand behind this hot engine to move the solenoid. I'm sorry, the load control valve to the front, so that I can do
Mhm.
what I need to do in less time and without burning myself. So
So
yeah,
have you used any of that training since you left the Navy, any of the mechanics training?
a little bit. Once I left the service, I actually worked in the oil industry for a while. I worked for, it was called El Paso Corporation at the time, or Southern Natural Gas, and it was bought out by El Paso Corporation. So I worked on the pipeline in a
Mm,
little tiny town called Gallion, Alabama.
wow.
And I remember when I pulled into this town, just leaving Virginia Beach, where I could order a pizza at 2 a.m, and I'm in this little town, and I pull up to the Walmart at 7 o'clock on a Sunday, and it was closed. Walmart closed at 7 o'clock on Sundays. So
Well, it is
that was
Alabama.
that was an adjustment. And that's where I was raised. I was raised in Alabama. And this town was much bigger than mine, but my town didn't even have a Walmart. So
Oh, wow.
no, no. I graduated in a class of 36 people.
Wow. So
Right.
small town girl, big Navy dreams.
I immigrated there. Remember Panamanian?
Oh, really?
I'm an
So not
immigrant.
only that, you immigrated to the United States and then you joined our military.
Yes.
Did you do that to get, were you already naturalized or did you get your naturalization through service?
I am still not naturalized.
What?
Tell me if you've heard this before. My recruiter said, and it never happened. I tried at least 4 times while I was still active duty, and it was just always, some kind. It always got pushed to someone else, or I think the final straw was I had a legal officer tell me, "Oh, I checked, and they're only allowing 3 Panamanians into the country a year." I'm like, okay, never mind. I'm here. I'm legal. I have my green card. I'm fine. I
Wow.
just I
So
just leave it alone.
so you served in the military as a foreign national and you didn't even get citizenship for it.
I think that should be part. If you leave this, if you complete your obligation and you get an honorable discharge, I believe that citizenship, it could be like, here's your citizenship. You fulfilled your
And
obligation, especially if it's a recruiting tool.
versus the other rule of guaranteed citizenship of being born here, right?
Right.
Literally, the minimum you can do is to exist here at your origination, but serving with your life in danger and knowing that you might be asked to take a beach with a bunch of Marines and you got to keep the boat running so you can keep dumping bodies and equipment on the beach. But you can't be a citizen.
No.
That right there is an amazing in indemnification of our system. I mean,
There are jobs I'm not allowed to have.
Go ahead.
There are jobs I wasn't allowed to have because I wasn't a citizen.
Well, yeah, of course, because you might be a spy, or some kind of foreign agent that's trying to learn our processes and whatnot. So what they
Right.
did is they stuck you on a job where you could get shot on the front lines.
But they did send women to the front lines, remember? Women
I
didn't
know.
wasn't really
Right.
there.
You were there. You were strictly a support person. It's not like you were actually doing anything like active in the
Everybody gets an M60. You get
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
everybody. They
Yeah,
Oprah with
yeah.
that. Here's a flight suit. Here's this training on this $32 million craft that there are only 2 units who do this.
Right.
But we can't risk you knowing.
We can't give you a TS clearance, dang it. And you can't be an American.
No.
No matter how much of a flag you may wear across your heart and your mind, you can't be an American. No, no, no.
I wonder if we make different sailors. I wonder if there's a difference there, because I was really excited to serve. I was like, oh, I'm going to serve in the U.S. Like, this is cool, better than mine. You guys had to come rescue us in '89. So I'm like, I'll come back. I'll pay that back. I'll pay my country's debt.
So,
yes,
so a lot of people look at Panama and they go, Panama wasn't that was a misadventure of American Pan-Americanism, right?
But Reagan put Noriega in power and he became a double agent. And Panama kind of said, hey, come get your boy. You put him out here, you come clean this up. So that was, 10 days. But he really, the American, like that part of it was 10 days, but it took us a long time to rebuild from that. I remember going back years later and you could still see the holes in the walls from guns and things like that. That was still there. There was a lot of rebuilding that took years.
Have you been back to Panama recently?
I was just there in March.
Oh, really? So how's Panama now? How many years later is it, and how is it now?
Oh my gosh. I went the last time when I was 12. So it was just after Operation Just Cause that I had gone home. And then I graduated high school, I joined the military, and life happened and it was hard to get back. So no, I was just there in March. And it's Panama. I mean, it's still not considered quite a third world country anymore because it has a stable enough economy. But we use the American dollar. That's the great part about Panama. It's very Americanized, even in the rural areas. Where my family is from in Boquete, that's where my family originated. And we have a lot of expats living there. A little too many for my taste. I was like, there are a lot of Americans here. I hate to get away.
Yeah. Where's the Panama that's Panama? Why does it look like the United States? I had that same experience going to Canada, to Guam, right? And to Okinawa. And then Kadima Air Base, the first city block around the air base feels like you're in a Japanese American town in San Francisco, right?
Oh, wow.
But you get a little further out and you start seeing the actual culture. But the Japanese really loved airsoft guns. American military ideas. Meanwhile, they are protesting about the fact that we're there. You know what I mean? That was
Yes.
it was such an amazing experience going to a place that both sees itself as owing us so much and really bitter about it.
Well, we were kind of mean to them.
Well,
I mean, they
I
earned
would
it. They
say it
earned
was a
it.
mutually assured.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We continued being mean. Like, I think they learned. I hope so. That I can't watch those movies. I get really upset.
Do you
I
really?
can't watch. I do. I do.
I
I don't want to go as far as saying I trigger, but I do get angry again. Like,
well, I
people should
mean,
pop up one more good time so they learn.
we not only rebuilt their country after we annihilated their country, right? But we suppressed news of our own POWs being used in Auschwitz-like camps in Japan.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I learn more every day.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't to paint the Japanese as evil. Like, we did what we did, collecting up all the Asian people in America, regardless of their actual nationality or their allegiance to the United States, and put them in secluded areas and monitor them. You know what I mean? But I don't know if we put them to work. I'm sure there was a level of cruelty because, you know, humans were involved. But the idea that our government told our veterans that had sacrificed and had been tortured that they had to not tell their story because we needed to turn the page, right? That we ask our veterans to bear the scars of not only taking life, but at times we're told we're not allowed to talk about our stories because it's not good for the national interest.
And here we are, decades later, suffering because we didn't tell those stories.
Yeah.
Because that created that culture. We don't talk about it.
Exactly. And, you
exactly.
know,
Don't express emotion. I go through that all the time, especially as a woman, where I'm in situations where I'm expected to cry or I'm expected, and I just have this. My mother used to say that, like, this is happening, you have no expression. Like, what are you feeling? It's because don't say anything. Just go back to compartmentalizing and do your job and don't deal with any emotion.
Yeah, and it's hard to deprogram yourself from that because you were intentionally programmed to be compartmentalized, right? I mean, because that's the way you survive a war. That's the way you survive battle, is that you compartmentalize and you move and you control the immediate space around you. Like, I can control what I do with myself. I can get lower to the ground. I can be bold when I need to be bold, right? But I have to do those things in tiny little boxes so that I can get it done. Because if I consider the wider picture, like a general does, then I am not going to survive my immediate surroundings.
Exactly. I remember I was on a ship, and the ship's motto was shipmate, self. So this big metal thing is priority. The person next to you is your second priority. Then you can take care of yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's pretty poignant. Yeah.
And then do you think that's a useful skill for life? Like, after you get out of the military and you're in the civilian world and everybody's their own general, or everybody's their own admiral.
I think it should be more. I would have been better with shipmate, self, ship. I think that would have been, if I could rearrange those. I think taking care of the people around us helps us take care of ourselves. So there's a mutual exchange there. So because I'm someone's shipmate. So if I'm taking care of my shipmate, that means they're also taking care of me. So there's a reciprocity. If something happens to my shipmate, then let me figure myself out, and then we can figure out the ship. But I can't do that by myself. Like I said, even when I was on a crew, even though I'm the mechanic, if things get hairy enough, I need my shipmates to come and help me. We can't fight a fire on a hovercraft by ourselves. It takes all of us. So no, I definitely we should be more conscious of other people. I think we come out of those situations and it becomes self-preservation because who's going to look out for you now when you become a civilian again? But I think we never really do. I think that's what we realized is that, oh no, well, there's a big difference between our life paths, and we're just kind of over here in a niche. So trying to transition into that civilian, I have to take care of myself. I have to handle myself because I don't know these people. I don't know how they function. I don't understand their training. Their culture is completely different. You know, they told me to be here at 10, so I was here at 9:45.
Yes.
And 10:30, and we're still waiting. And which, to be honest, if I'm being honest, I was late all the time, even when I was in the service. I was always late. I don't know why, but they diagnosed me late. They found out I had obsessive compulsive disorder, so it made it really hard. But it made me really good at my job. So I think that balanced it out. I was like, yeah, she's late, but it was never like hours. You know what I mean? Right. I'm just rushing in.
If you show up with donuts, no one asks questions.
Exactly. But I was confident in my work, and that's what saved me, is that I would just work a little harder and then there'd be a level. And I didn't abuse that, but I was also a single mom on active duty. So stuff just happens in the morning, you know. And traffic in Norfolk, you know, is a disaster. Oh my gosh. It would take me 2 hours to go 11 miles. By the time you get to the base, to the checkpoint, to the second checkpoint after 9/11, remember they added that one at the end of the piers. And so you went through the gate with the car, then you had to go through the checkpoint at the end of the pier, and then you had to go, you know, across the quarterdeck. So it's just time. And trying to find parking on base.
Yeah.
Another bringing back memories, or you're
yeah, well, I mean, I served pre 9/11. I was concerned I was going to get called up for inactive reserves as I was downstairs in college at the RIT Ritzkeller, you know, which is, you know, an underground bar, right, on campus underground bar. And I was 27, I think. Somewhere around that age. And so I'm watching the Twin Towers get hit, and I'm like, what is this? Some kind of bad sci-fi movie or, you know, attack film? And then
I thought it was like what was that? War of the Worlds, remember, on the radio?
Right.
Are they trying to make a TV version of this? That was my first thought. Is this another War of the World? Is that what's happening?
I was having such a dissociative moment. I'm like I'm watching TV because TV's where fiction happens, and news is no difference to that. But when the second plane hit and I realized that this shit was real, I'm like, well, we know this is not going to go the way the people thought that it was going to go that did this.
Everything just changed. Everything in that moment. I was out of the service. I was still a reservist because I got out of the service in May 2001. And I joined the reserves, but I was really unhappy with my job. And so September 13th, I re-enlisted. So I went from active to active reserve, and I re-enlisted September 13th. And by September 28th, I was back on active duty.
And you're still not a citizen.
I'm
sorry. I just want to recognize that for those watching, that this woman was out. And my ass was sitting there going, fuck, I'm going to get called back up. But then I thought, no, my job was not the kind that they would call back up, right?
Yes. So, well, you know what happened? I remember too, because you know, you're young and you're still you still have some fight in you. And I remember being in the States when Panama was seized, right? When the US was coming in there, and you're watching your own country being attacked, right, on television. And I was still young, so I was helpless. I can't do anything. And I just remember thinking, I know my rating is undermanned. I know they need engineers, because they were undermanned when I got out. So I thought, I just remember, and of course, this is all, you know, 23, 24-year-old ego. And I thought, oh, you're not bringing that shit over here. I'm like, if all I can do is be on a ship and try to stave this off, if I can, because you've already hit my home, right? I know what this feels like. When 9/11 happened, I just remember, oh, I know what this feels like. And now it's happening where I am. Instead of just watching in my country on TV, now it's the country I'm in, we're
Right.
not doing this. I just had a lot of like, no, we're not. I'm going back. I'm
That's
going back.
that's
No way.
that's fantastic, I think. I mean, what better reason to go out and do something? I mean, you literally have gotten, I mean, do you get VA coverage?
I
Like, are you
do.
eligible for VA though?
Yes. Yep. I have everything. I have all the benefits of a veteran. I just can't vote or hold office, or I can't be president, which I'm fine with. I don't want that job.
Yeah, who wants to, everybody that goes into that job, age is 10 years and 4, you
I
know?
can't imagine.
And then by the time they run for their second term, they are just like, yeah,
But
this is
they're mostly in their 70s by the time they run anyway. So it's just you're telling everyone else to retire by 65, then maybe you should take that hit and retire yourself.
wow, shots fired. Yeah,
It's true.
I'm 3 years eligible for running for president right now, and you know, I don't like my chances. You know what I'm saying? I think I have a better chance of hosting the Golden Globes this year
Yeah.
than I do of ever being president. But who would
Yeah.
want that job? It literally has both all the responsibility and the bullshit and none of the real power, because that's what our Congress is supposed to do. It's the power part.
Yeah. It's not a monarchy.
Yeah, people seem to forget that. You know, it's been interesting watching. Well, I don't want to get in that. Let's talk about you.
Right.
So in your experience, you had to take care of the shipmate around you. And the reason why we have to take care of the ship before your shipmate is because if the ship goes
We
down,
all go.
exactly. So
We're all going.
so you know, as much as I want to be self shipmate ship, the
That's true.
truth
That's a
is,
good
if I
point.
want to be selfish, I need to take care of the ship and my shipmate so that I can survive, right? So it's always an interesting thing when you take things.
Right, it does cross. You're right. Yeah, because that ship goes down with there. It's a long swim to anywhere at that point.
Exactly.
And I was in
The
engineering
sharks are
space.
always hungry.
So we're below the water line on the ship. Engineering's below the water line. So what are our chances? Because they're closing the hatches, and you're like, oh, well, I'm still here. Oh.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I remember the most from my Navy experience is how much they made sure we understood we were property.
Yes.
You know, as enlisted
From
people.
the day one. From day one. From the minute you set foot in Great Lakes, you do not have a name. You have a last name. You have the last four of your social, and I liken it. I tell people all the time, especially being on the ship, it's a lot like prison, and they laugh, but it's the truth. We're in uniforms all day. If you want any kind of special privileges, if I'm in engineering and you're on the mess decks, if you're a mess cook, then but you want a signature, right? You're trying to get that ESWAS pin. Well, you know what? You want my signature so you can get this qualification, but I want chicken in my omelet tomorrow. And
Yes,
there's that
option.
yes, and then there's where I was tied up, so my laundry didn't go down. So now I'm having to go to laundry and saying, "Hey, can I throw a load in?" And they're looking like, "What are we gonna get?" So it's a lot of. And then they say, "Well, you need to help us get an omelet with chicken in it from the staff." Like, okay. There's a lot of that, right? You're told when you're told when to get up, you work all day.
Yeah.
But the only thing is we don't get yard time because there's no yard.
Yeah, where's the yard? I mean, thank God I was on an aircraft, right? So I would have 2 hours of getting the aircraft ready to fly, and then we would be on the aircraft at least 12.
At least.
Right. And then we would have 2 hours at the end of the flight that we were going to end up working on something or another, right? And each one of us had different responsibilities, but if we wanted to get to a bar and get a drink before we got our 8 hours required sleep before we flew again, then people helped you hustle around and get shit cleaned up, right? And if you were a dick on the crew, No one helped you. It didn't matter if it meant that people got to go to the bar faster or not. You were a dick. So,
Yeah.
so
You
that
learn
was
how to get along. You get along. And I think that's the other thing in the civilian world that's so different is I can work with people I don't like. It doesn't faze me because at the end of the day, I want to go home, I want to do a good job and go home. And we don't have us. And then the advancement system being so different.
Mhm.
It really is on your own merit. So I don't have to outshine anybody. You can do your absolute best. And that's all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about doing better than the other person.
Right.
Just do your best because that's all. I talk to other service members about that, especially in the branches where they don't take a test. I don't think I would have done as well but I was fortunate. However, there were people that I can honestly say were much better mechanics than I was, but they struggled to take the test. I wouldn't say I was mediocre. I was definitely a good mechanic. I love engineering. So I was a good mechanic, but there were just people who were much better. They could do it
Right.
faster and faster, a lot more experience, but they would sit down to take the test and it was difficult for them to, what is this? You're just doing the job.
Right,
But
right. Why can't you just look at the way I do my work? I mean, my boat's always running. I fix everything. I solve all the problems, even that problem that's been sitting around for 3 years that no one else solved. Why can't you just advance me on that? Well, because the Navy actually works off a Confucian system, similar to the Chinese and the Civil Corps, right? Where you take a test and based on your test scores combined with your personal reviews by your bosses, and those things get combined along with any kudos, approval letters,
education, volunteer work.
right? So all those things get combined into a score that says you're exemplary enough to be leadership, right? So it's not, it's a very earned thing, but what it does is it rewards people that are interested in advancing, but not necessarily people that are good at their jobs. But that means people that are good at their jobs stay at the job, right? So it's an
Which
interesting,
I think I would have liked to just stay in that kind of E5 world. I never had a much desire to be E6 because then it's managing people.
right?
And I didn't want to deal with that because we all know what those E1s, E2s are like when they first get there and they're buying the car at 25% interest, or they got you remember all this?
Yes.
They got married right before boot camp. They had to marry that high school sweetheart,
Uh-huh.
and now they have, he's been on a 6-month deployment. She's 4 months pregnant. Like, oh God, but there sure it is. All of that, I just like doing my job. I really didn't have the desire to navigate all of that because it just seems miserable and never ending. It's like, oh.
Well, and not only once you become like a first class or a chief, you start dealing with butter bars and them,
Yes, that was the other thing.
coming in and thinking they got a lead because they're the officer, right? But what they don't know is that they don't know shit about nothing. They know what book learning has taught them at that point.
Yes, exactly. But honestly, what's funny is my ex-husband was an officer, and when I stepped into that world, that's miserable.
Oh
That
yeah.
is oh God, the bureaucracy
Right.
and the expectations that were put on me as the spouse, where I remember going to hail and farewells and they would say, oh, his wife didn't show up again, and
Uh-huh.
why that matters. She could be home with a sick kid. She could be working. There could be a million reasons, but then the second phase would be, doesn't she care about his advancement? Like, what? I have to be here? Like, I didn't
It's
even,
his job, not mine.
it's him. Why do I have to be here? And I remember the captain's wife would call and say, oh, I'm having tea at my home on Tuesday at 2:00. I'm like, or a wet Sunday at 2:00, tea at my house. I'm like, oh God, I'd rather do anything except go to your house. I avoided you when I was on the ship. I'm definitely not trying to find you now.
Right.
So they live in a completely different world. I have a lot of empathy. They don't get away with anything. They get so much more responsibility. Yes, they get nicer berthings. They get better food, but I would gladly stay in my little space, scraping corrosion than to deal with the bureaucracy. That's just not That's not my thing. I'm definitely more that foot soldier in the ground. I'd rather be hitting the beach than, as crazy as that sounds, and it's definitely not coming from an arrogant place. It's that that's miserable. To me, that's a bigger misery, just all because it never stops. You know, we
Right.
eventually leave the beach, but that is their world all the time, and that's not, I'm not cut out for that.
Yeah, but they also get to walk away from that world at any moment, right? They don't have a legal contract holding them to their position unless they've had it like an exchange of education, right?
Right.
So that's the difference between an officer and enlisted. An officer can say, I need to retire my commission, right? And they can
Right.
basically exit the service. Now, if you've had a particular set of training, like you're a fighter pilot, you can't leave after not serving your term as a fighter pilot.
If they offered that to enlisted, we would all quit. We would all just
Oh, I
like, oh,
know,
this is
because the
terrible.
job sucks. And when you calculate what you're actually making for all the shit that you're dealing with, you are making nothing.
You should be a waitress. You could be a waitress and get tips and a day off. I
Right.
think that's what I think it came down to $2.17 an hour when someone did the math while I was in.
Oh no, I mean, if you calculate it out, I think it's it would, or at least when I was serving, I made $13,000 a year.
I don't remember. I think I was a little
And
bit more.
I was an E5 making $13,000 a year. Now this was in
medical.
1998. Huh?
Medical, but you got medical.
Yeah. And you know, which meant that they could stick whatever probes up my asshole because I was aircrew. And so I had to get flight physicals all the time. I had to be.
We did too. Yeah, hovercraft, same thing. Because we, even though we are, at the time we were only, they changed the bag. And at first it was only 4 feet. Now it's higher. But
Right.
I probably offset, shouldn't say that. But I do remember we had to abide by all aviation regulations. So even though I'm on a ship, I still have to meet all of your criteria to fly. There, you couldn't take certain allergy medications, just so many rules.
Yet, but they would give uppers to pilots to keep them awake on long flights, right? So like, it's amazing to me what I wasn't allowed to do and what I was allowed to do and what they were allowed to tell me to do. You know what I mean? It's
The unspoken rules.
exactly, right? The things I mean, when I was in, it was don't tell, don't pursue, right? For my gay brothers and sisters that served closeted. You know, and technically I was in a same-sex marriage with my wife because as the Navy defines two people, there's no gender in it. So the rules were that you couldn't be married. Now, thankfully, my wife, she graduated to E4 before me. And I graduated to E5 before her. She actually got her approval as we were had left. She had already like qualified for the test. The Navy already gave her E5, but we had already been out for 2 months, right? So we were always in the same rank as far as that, and we had different commands. You know, she was stationed in shore duty, I was stationed sea duty, but I flew on airplanes.
And you can't have children either.
We did, but yes,
Well,
you're not supposed to have.
no,
Matter of fact, she was sent to jail by her chief because she wouldn't sign away her legal parentage to my mother and father who lived 3 hours away.
yes. I remember meeting females on a ship who told me that their last ship made them sign a contract that they would not get pregnant while they were assigned to that ship.
My wife, I got her pregnant. We got her pregnant because she was there.
I appreciate that. No, because that was the other messaging. It was the woman. It was if something happened and there was a woman, oh, she did this.
Yeah. No, we got her pregnant. And she had been trying to go out on an aircraft carrier because she wanted to do her job out at sea and be fully involved and kind of take after her dad, who was on an aircraft carrier, right? But unfortunately, I had gotten exactly the right amount of money to fly from my command where I was in Oklahoma to her command in Seattle for a plane ticket. That's it. Like I got double paid, and that's like free money, right? Because they don't charge you interest when they overpay you on accident. So I'm like, hey, I haven't seen her in a while. Let's go have a fun trip, right? And then a few months later, she's no longer going to go out to sea because she is pregnant. So,
Yeah.
and then of course we got married, so that we could be stationed together, right? We got married because we loved each other, but the truth was, she was stationed halfway across the country. If we were going to have a relationship and a child, you had to be married if you were going to be stationed together. So
I think they still make you wait a whole year, right? They didn't do it right away.
well, my child was, well, I'll tell you what my chief said when I said, I really want to be there for my son's birth. He goes, well, son, there's a Navy saying that you can be there to lay the keel, but not for the launching. So, in other words, yeah, you did your part and the Navy's going to use you as they see fit. So if you're lucky, you might get there. I was lucky. I was able to be there for my child. It happened on a Thanksgiving. And it was the first time we'd had anyone come visit us in our home as a couple when she finally got pregnant. Or I mean, not pregnant, finally went into labor. So, that was a beautiful thing I experienced. And that was just after the Oklahoma City bombing, actually, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. I visited that.
Memorial.
Wow. Yes, it's humbling. That's powerful. The little chairs.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, that's powerful. No, I
That whole
deployed.
downtown area looks so different now. Like that, the renewal that they've put into that area totally changes that space. Like I have very different memories of what Oklahoma City was like before they, around that time. I mean, I was less than 3 miles away. I saw the plume go up.
Oh, wow.
Felt the shake. I was working a part-time job while going through C school because my wife.
You didn't make enough money.
Yeah. And someone came running in and goes, a bunch of Arabs just bombed the Capitol building.
Oh gosh.
And I looked at her and I said, you stupid Okie. No Arab is going to come to this country and go bomb in the middle of Oklahoma at a federal building. They don't care that much.
Not there. No, that's not a statement.
Yeah.
Sorry, Oklahoma.
And then, so, and then it turned out to be a farmer from Kansas or Missouri.
Homegrown citizen.
Yeah, he was
so worried about me.
so bitter about his freedom that he wanted to go blow up the federal building. So anyways, sorry, sidetracking stories here. So
yeah, no, I deployed, but speaking of children, I got the Navy issue birth control. And I was religious about that because on these hovercraft, I couldn't wait to deploy. This is all pre 9/11, so things are still pretty good. And that's the thing, hovercraft, we handle some of the smaller conflicts. But here I am, and then I went to medical, I'm like, I just don't feel well. And they said, could you be pregnant? I said, no, I'm on that. You guys gave me that birth control and I'm not even due, it was the shot. So it was like every 3 months. I always scheduled it a week before the end date because I wanted a buffer. And I went in and they said, well, you're pregnant. And I said, no, I'm 21 at the time. And I said, no, I can't be. You guys gave me that shot. It's 98% effective. I can't be pregnant. And they said, congratulations, you made the top 2%.
At what a time to be in the percentage of those that sneak through.
Oh my gosh, this is like July of 1998. And that was my oldest daughter, and hell broke loose at that command. They were angry. I was sent to DRB. They said I broke a barracks rule. That's what they got me for. No, you're mad that I'm pregnant. That's what the truth is. And so I got sent to DRB, and they're telling me that I'm going to end up on welfare, and that their taxpayer dollars are going to have to help me with raise this child. And then my other favorite quote from that day was, "Now you're just like every other female who gets pregnant in order to avoid deployment." I remember that.
What
And
bullshit?
no, well, what's funny is that she was born in March, and then later that year, we had this was 1999. I can't remember the name of the hurricane, but this hurricane is happening, and there was a boat that needed a deck mech, and I'm looking around. They came to mind because we were the deck standing up next. And they said, "We need a deck mech." I'm looking around, I'm thinking, he's deployed. And mind you, I'm the fourth female to qualify at this unit as a deck mech. And so eyes were on me already, but I did really well in school. I had that going for me. I'm super analytical, so I could do the work. And I thought, you know what, this is my chance. First of all, she's 5 months old. So I thought, I can be gone for 6, because I only intended to do that 4-year enlistment. So it was like, let me go ahead and get this deployment out of the way while she's small, before she knows that I'm gone or can really understand that.
Right.
And so I volunteered for my first deployment. I volunteered for that. So that took some of the, that took some of their leverage away. Oh, you're getting, no, now it was kind of a good thing, because now I'm a woman, a mother who volunteered. What are you going to do with that?
Right.
And I remember thinking that, like, oh, what are you going to say now that you've got all of these guys, you went down this road, not one of these guys stepped up, but the young mom did. So come on, let's play. And that's how I ended up on my first appointment.
You called them on their bullshit. You raised the stakes on their ass.
No, they were really good to me after that. They said, okay, maybe they're not, but they're right. I mean, there are the women who definitely burn those bridges going ahead, where there was one who got pregnant on maternity leave. How to do that? So,
well, and the thing is these rules about fraternization and whatnot on the ship, I don't even think that they really care if you're having sex or that you're having relationships. What they care about is when shit goes wrong.
Yes, the liability.
Right? The liability and the conflict it brings for when you handle situations of stress. Because if that person you're having sex with is in danger, you're not focused on the person next to you. You're worried about getting to the person you care about, because intrinsically that person is more important than the ship, right? But the ship is more important for both of you,
all of us. Yes.
So you got to figure out, like, can I be in a relationship with someone, and can I let them die if it came to it? Because the only way I can save them is if I'm willing to let them die. That's a hard thing to come to terms with, so it's,
I would think that it's too hectic. Like, I just remember being in situations, it's just too hectic, and you're trying to manage the situation. I don't know that I was worried about the other people.
Well, but that might be,
that's where the training kicks in. Like, this is happening, and this is what I have to do in this.
But there's been, sailors lost to lovers situations. What if you've had a bad breakup with someone and you have a chance to either save them, hold the dog door open for them for that last second so they can get through, or close it on them before they can get out, and you're free and clear of any guilt because, you just made the best choice at the time, right?
I think I guess shipboard life, that makes, I just didn't spend enough time on the ship to be in those situations. So I guess for me, I'm just on this little flying boat.
I mean, granted,
I don't think about things like that. Like, what? And I wasn't that, I'm friendly, but I'm not that friendly. When I was great friends with people I served with. Once I got off that sucker, I don't even know you. I would see people out in town and not know who they were.
Yes.
I know you at work. I don't know you out in town. I'd run into people.
Or you recognize their face, but you don't remember their name. And you're just like, hey, you.
I know your face. I know this person. And you're trying to avoid them because you don't want to be embarrassed about not knowing who they were. All the time. Yeah, I didn't. But I think also because I was a woman and that it was always avoid. Well, I'm in engineering. It's all men. So I'm just constantly in that avoidance, like just stay away from them. Obviously, I didn't do a good job of that my first command. That's where I learned, like, oh, okay, that's why. But I learned my lesson, so we can take
Right.
that one to the bank. I learned that lesson, and like, oh no, I'm just gonna go over here. But I think that's the other thing. I think at least I was never in situations where everything was romantic anyway. I think that's a big thing. Like, oh, they're in the Navy and they're doing this on the ship. First of all, you're tired all the time.
God, yeah.
And you're working. When you're not tired, you're working. When you're not working, you're eating. And when you finally get the chance to go out on liberty, you just want to decompress. So we're partying, we're drinking, and there's a lot of debauchery. So I don't think the relationships are as prevalent. They happen, but I think people really literally romanticize being on a ship. Like, oh, we must be having sex all the time. Like, where? I'm in a compartment with 15 other women. And I was in a small berthing.
Yeah.
Some of those forward berthings, like, does it happen? Absolutely. But it's just not as prevalent as people think. I wasn't, even being in those male dominated fields, I didn't have those experiences where I was hit on all the time, or, hey, because you're just busy we're all just trying to work and go home.
Right.
I
mean,
can honestly,
that's probably true after my period. I mean, because that was the transition era when I joined in 93. Tried to join in 92. Recruiter fucked it up. Joined in 93. And there was a lot of different experiences that most of the women that I served with were having with, not all folks in uniform are good people. There's the same percentage of people in uniform as there is in any other mix of society. You have your good ones, you have your monsters, you have your confused people, you have your entitled, whatever it is, all the same shit you encounter on the street every day, you're going to encounter in the military. It's just hopefully channeled most of the time, right?
You're right. I think looking back, hearing you say that, I think that what happened is that I had already learned how to distance myself. So that's why it didn't happen to me, because I already figured out, keep yourself inaccessible. If you're inaccessible, they can't, people would try. It definitely happened. I mean, I did come out of that with quite a bit of my own MST, but for the most part, I just avoided, I would just do my work and hide. And I remember even being told, like, I didn't congregate. So I suffered because of that, where I didn't have the same sense of camaraderie with the rest of the unit. But on the other hand, I also avoided a lot of that, because let me just stay over here on my own, and I have my friends out in town and I hang out with them, and I learned early on not to mix the two.
Yeah, because it's really hard when let's face it, you're young, you're hunting for some kind of companionship, you're trying to figure out, like, what does a partner look like for me, right? So where else am I going to meet people but the people around me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yes. I think also when I first got to ACU4, I was really young, and most people were quite a bit older than I was. So anyone in my age group, we were probably just friends, and everybody was so much older. It was like a lot of uncles, some grandpas mixed in there. Right. And I came in 97. So that the women who enlisted with you would have already done a full tour. So that was a lot of the turmoil happened. So by the time I came through in 97, it became fearful. They were fearful. And I remember that happening. It was the two extremes. Either they were overly accommodating. Miller, are you sure you understand? Are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. Or they completely hated me. They hated the fact that I was there. I was going to be the downfall of everything. And it was really difficult to find that kind of common ground until the end. At the end of that enlistment, it did change, where I felt like, oh, okay, I'm just here, and I was just kind of left alone. But I don't know. I also just don't get that involved. I'm usually on the perimeter. So I had a good balance, I think. So for the most part, I did okay. It's usually when I was on the bigger ships, whenever we would attach to the bigger ships, I would see a lot more of the unacceptable behavior coming from the officer ranks because they're the ones with all the power. And they, but the enlisted ranks, by the time I went through, I would have to guess that there was a big improvement because there was a risk. I was a risk. So they tended to be a little bit more careful because assault craft units are more enlisted than officer, or at least they were at the time. The crew was all enlisted. So
yeah, normally small boats, it's a chief in charge, or you know what I mean? Not
it's great there.
Yeah, and sometimes maybe a senior chief, right? We
could have up to master chief. We had master chief craft masters also.
Yeah, that's that's also typically a bosun's path of going up as an enlisted to a senior position is driving boats, right? So yeah, that's amazing. Now, I mean, your life didn't end in the Navy once you got out. You've done a lot of things with your life.
Crazy.
You've been on broadcast media as a journalist.
Kind of. It was a new venture, and I started out as an admin. Next thing I knew, I was doing ad sales. I got my degree in public relations and marketing. And then I went on to get my MBA but it was funny because I did it all because I wanted to get back into oil and gas. I thought, well, I really don't want to turn wrenches anymore. I don't want to do that. You kind of outgrow that.
Right.
And so I thought one of my next jobs after I really got out of the service was technical writing. And I used to write tech manuals. So I've actually written 2 tech manuals for the Army. And like, oh, I kind of like this world, but I would like to, the pamphlets that you read or the instructional things, I liked doing that. So I thought I'm going to get this degree in public relations marketing. And it was after the I don't know what they're called, in the Gulf, the drill, those things, remember there was a big thing, it happened. Oh my God, they're going to kill me back home.
Oil spill?
Yes, the oil spill, thank you. Well, no, that was in Alaska, I think. This was another one.
Well, no, the one in Alaska was Exxon Valdez.
Exxon, you're right. So BP was the one.
And I remember Louisiana Gulf.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So I remember watching that, and I remember thinking, oh gosh, there was a big thing about the CEO saying, I just want to get back to my life. Right. And these are all oil workers and their families who are really struggling and suffering. And they're like, I think that's the best example of that 1% mentality where, oh, you just want to go back. Like, you want to go back to your life? Yeah, so do we. And I just remember thinking, oh, if there had been someone to say to him, you know what, the best PR move you can make is go down to the Gulf, grab a duck and some Dawn soap and start and get hands-on. These are hands-on people. You can't say I want to get back because they're kind of the same way with the officer enlisted, right? When you're enlisted, you think, oh, this officer's out, they get this nice berthing and they get the good food and they get this and they get that. You see the perks, right? They don't see the liability. And so if he had just stepped down and said, you know what, let me just go in and get my hands dirty, that would have been the best way to communicate with these people than to say, oh, I just want to get back to my life. It didn't translate well. If somebody was there to tell him how to talk to them. And I think that's where this path started going is the, how do we get more veterans out into the outdoors? How do we get them into jobs? And it's because we need a liaison, we need liaisons, we need translators. And right now the messaging is all, when we're transitioning out, I remember when I went to TAPS, it was make sure you shine your shoes, have a good resume and wear a suit to your interview. And there was no true transition assistant. And they've changed that messaging a little bit. It's better now, but we're the only ones receiving that message. No one is educating these employers on how to manage us. You can't manage me the same way you can't manage a 24-year-old who's just spent 6 years on ships, managing Marines, mitigating potential risk and loss of life. I'm the 24-year-old who knows what to do if there's a gaping chest wound at work. I'm not the 24-year-old who knows how to create the spreadsheet that you want, but I can learn. And You're treating us the same, but I'm not typical. But that also doesn't mean that I'm less educated or less capable or less competent. But get me there. But then I have to start lower. And that was hard too. So I think some businesses have started creating these pathways specifically for veterans, catering to the way we do things. But civilians, they don't start with training the way we do. I've noticed that they don't have the same focus on really knowing your job, really knowing your chain of command. Sometimes I would feel like I don't know who I work for because anybody can come to my desk and tell me what to do. Like that would never happen in the service. I couldn't imagine someone. I would never see my MPA or my Chang. My Chang would go to the MPA, who would go to my chief, who would go my first class, who would go to my work center soup, who would tell me what they wanted me to do.
Right.
So all of this, there's so much structure, and civilians, I think they miss out on a lot because they don't have the same structure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they take you into boot camp and they run you ragged with a bunch of nonsense, and then they teach you how to brush your teeth again.
How to lace your shoes. Remember, we had to take our shoelaces out, relace our shoes. You relearned how to write and speak the alphabet, how to write and speak numbers.
We got taught block letters because we were only taught cursive in school. Well, I was. Now it's a different world, right?
So was I.
I mean, I remember in boot camp them taking this guy who looked like a ginger ape, right? Like he looked like an orangutan. He was a white guy with red hair, but he looked like an orangutan, had an exact face like an orangutan face. I know this is horrible, but this is a true story. He couldn't figure out how to salute. He kept cupping his hand, right? And so the company commander took him over to a wall and beat his hand against the wall to try and get the crisp salute, not the broken wrist or the cupped hand, right? The guy just kept doing this, probably because he was an orangutan in human form. You know what I mean? Because like orangutans don't ever do this. They do this.
Evolution.
I don't know. But that was the guy that you would send into the fire ahead of you because he would probably forget whatever tools he needed. And then
he would just bulldoze his way. Instinct, those animal instincts would kick in and he would just handle it.
He would just solve the problem for us. He would beat it out like an ape. No. But yeah, like our boot camp life experience are these characters that you see failing, and it's not like the SEALs where you can fail out. Like you're going to succeed. They're going to keep running you through the system, hoping that you're going to get it right because they've already spent all the time, money, and energy to get you there, right? But yeah, so that was my.
There's so many people. Please fail her out. Please, please, please don't make me serve with this person, please. No, we definitely had those. Like the first night, they're peeing themselves. Like, what did you think this was going to be? I don't understand what they thought the military would be like. It blows my mind where it comes in and we're in the first week and you're already peeing yourself because they made you stay out past 10 o'clock at night and they woke you up at 4 a.m. to exercise. Right. That is the thing you've experienced in life so far. Please go.
I mean, my dad was a hippie, right?
Part gets negative, right?
My dad was a hippie. And so it's not like my grandfather sat me down and says, this is what boot camp's going to be like. So I went in thinking Full Metal Jacket, right? That's how I thought of boot camp. Was I had watched Full Metal Jacket as a teenager, and I'm like going, this is what boot camp's going to be like. And, other movies where I watch how first you pick the biggest MFer out there, you punch him in the face, and you know what I mean? So I'm pulling in, and how they're running you ragged like Smurfs because you're still in your civilian clothes and you've either traveled on buses or you've traveled on airplanes and you've gone through the cheapest route possible. So that what that means is a 5-hour trip takes you 3 days.
Gosh, I think they woke us up 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday. And I think we made it to you do your MEPS, you're in processing. And then by the time I got to Chicago, which you can't sleep, you can't take a nap while they're not talking to you, right? You have to be awake the whole time. And then we made it to Illinois, 2 o'clock Tuesday morning. And I don't think we went back to bed until 10 o'clock Tuesday night. So I've been up all that time. And they start you that, because then you're more complacent, right? You're more willing to go over there. You're like, okay, I'm over here. You're
Yeah,
carrying this package.
I'm too tired to fight with you over this. Just
Exactly.
I'll
And
follow
the
the line.
I came in with a short haircut. It was a little longer than this, but I had it in a bowl cut.
Right.
A little bit, because I like pulling the sides. If you notice, I know it the whole time I'm always pulling hair in my face. So it's like I wanted to be able to pin it back. And I remember I'm standing, they crunch us all into that little barber shop. Remember that little barber shop?
With the Floby.
And the little Asian lady, and I've seen memes about her. And when I saw that meme, I remembered, I'm like, that's her. She got me too. And so she reaches, she looks at me from across the room, and I'm behind people because I thought, I don't need a haircut. Mine's already short in the back. And so she says, and I'm looking around like, she cannot be talking to me. My hair's already short. And so she's like, no, you. And so I go there and I sit down, I'm like, what is going on? She goes, you can't have a fad haircut, because I had the angle. So no brush, no nothing. She just grabs my hair and she cuts it. And then she goes to the other side, she grabs it and she cuts it. And so I had this hair, it was longer on one side than the other. Awful. Awful. And so now I see those little memes about her, and it's she got me. So I was stuck like this. You can see it in my boot camp picture, where you can see that I tried to like curl it to try to get it to even out. No, it was a mess.
God, I came in with a head shave, right? Big mistake. I pissed them off because they want to shave your hair off.
And they charge you for it. They charge me for it. She said $750.
Yeah. Did you have to give her
that
chit?
Monopoly?
Yeah,
it was the little Monopoly money.
For us, what they did is they gave us chits. It was like a ticket that you would buy at Costco in pairs for a raffle, and they called it a chit. So you get a chit book, and you had to pay for all the shit that you were getting in boot camp with that chit book, which you got Monopoly money. So that's interesting.
Well, we called it Monopoly money, but I think it's what you were talking about, where you had to tear it out, and it was. Yeah. I think we even had different denominations or something like that. You didn't have quarters, so she probably got $8 out of me, which makes me mad. She owes me 50 cents for that haircut. I want a refund. But yeah, it was $750 after she just was like, oh my God.
Yeah, your first paycheck after 8 weeks of boot camp is like $250, which is enough money to get drunk, hire a taxi, maybe get some McDonald's, go to a strip club, and then go see your parents.
Yes, well, I think people don't realize that we pay. We pay for everything that we got. Everything that I got at the end, they deducted if you needed shoes, they issued everything, but you reimbursed them for it. That wasn't free.
It was company store 101,
Yep.
16 tons and what do I get? Another day older and deeper in debt, right?
Yeah. I remember that too. And then you could go in the exchange, but even makeup was so expensive. Well, I'm not a big makeup person anyway, but I remember, for our photos, we were allowed to go and get makeup. And I thought, this is expensive makeup. I don't even wear it this much, but it was, yes, I remember that too.
Boot camp was the only time a lot of people had ever been to church, because you were allowed to have an hour and a half if you went to church. If you didn't go to church, and it didn't matter what denomination, Muslim, Christian, Wiccan, whatever, you could be whatever you wanted. You just had to go to chapel. Or you had an hour and a half of extra chores, right? It's kind of, and it's the way they taught us to smoke cigarettes too, because you could go smoke a cigarette for every hour for 10 minutes. But if you took a break, you are a lazy piece of shit, and how dare you? So as long as you had a cigarette in your hand, you could take a break. But I never wanted to spend money on cigarettes. So I was the guy that would bum cigarettes because I wanted a break, because I was lazy like the rest of those fuckers. Yeah. And I didn't want to have to pay for my addiction, because I didn't believe that it was mine. It was the Navy's wanted me to have that addiction. And Because cigarettes and porn were the cheapest thing on base.
I couldn't smoke because I'm allergic to smoke. I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. So, but but I'm mouthy. That was the thing about me, is that even in boot camp, my RDCs, they really liked me. And I think it's because I just was like, I'm just here to play the game. I was a little bit older, and it's funny how there is you realize the difference between 17 and 19 in boot camp, had already tried college, didn't fit in there, didn't like that. And so by the time I got to boot camp, I understood that, oh, I just have to play this game. And they would come but that is where the show no emotion started. Yeah. Because I saw, oh, they yelled, she cried, they yelled more. So they would come to, but they didn't say, I didn't have any negative experiences in boot camp. It was all funny, if anything, it would come. I remember I had a male RDC, he would come and he would yell in my face, and I would just, and he'd try not to laugh. He'd stifle a laugh and go to yell at the next person because they're like, oh, you can't, it became a game, like if they could break me, and not in a negative sense. So it was just, we're going to get her today.
Game recognizes game, right? Once they realize you're onto their bullshit, then they enjoy it.
Yes. And I was definitely that person. I was not the stellar sailor. I was not the person who was, going to get any kind of award for good behavior or merit or anything. I was the one who I was kind of more like a clinger, if you remember MASH. Like, I was that person, like, they're quirky, we don't know what to do, but they're good at what they do, so we don't know. And I remember I came out of I was guidon. So I have this flag I have to carry everywhere I go. So I'm carrying the guidon around, and we went to the mess decks, we had lunch. And I came out, and I had just gotten a brand new guidon. It was a brand new, sharp, white, crispy flag. And there was an old one sitting there. So I spin it around, like, that's not my unit number, but their number was on there, division number. And so I went to my RDC, and I'm mad. Like, I took that personally. They took my crisp flag and they left me this raggedy thing. And so he says, go back and get it. Well, remember, in boot camp, you have to follow the flow of traffic.
Right.
So I had to go this weird way trying to get to the other barracks. And I show up, and immediately, as soon as I got there, because I went the wrong way, and it was this whole thing. And as soon as I walked in, the kid on watch, he looked at me, and he looked at me confused, like, what's going on? And I'm sure my expression was like, what the hell? And he started to laugh. I started to laugh. So his RDC sees us laughing, calls my RDC and reports me for laughter. So I get back and I'm like, we called them ships, right? So I get back to my ship 13, the Bonhomme Richard was what it was called. And he says, he's just sitting at his desk, like this, because it's me. He's trying to stay composed. He's like, what the hell is she doing today? And so I walked in, I'm like, I just own it. But that was the other thing I think they didn't mind. When I did something, I'm like, yeah, I did it. Like, okay. So he says, what happened? And, you have to come in and you have to be all at attention when you're talking to them. And he says, what happened? I said, I fucked up that whole evolution. And he's like,
evolution,
Miller,
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Just go back to your rack. He said, just go back to your rack. Okay. So I never got in trouble, but I always owned what I did. Or I remember another time, it was one of those girls who just they don't realize they make it hard for everyone. I understand you're miserable, but you're just spreading this misery. She was walking ahead of me, and he was at a table in the middle of our barracks. And he he looks at her, and she's hobbling. Nothing was wrong with her. Like, from first day, she was peeing herself. Like, she just wanted to go home. She's like, I didn't want to do this. And like, okay, but you're making it harder for the rest of us. So I had no sympathy. But by this point in boot camp, I was like, just kick her out. She doesn't want to be here. She's making us miserable. She's not going to be good at this. Let her go. And so he looks at her. He says, what's wrong? And I said, she's crazy. That's what the fuck is wrong with her. She's nuts. Like, get her out of here. And he just put his head down. And I remember he just did this, like, trying not to laugh. So I did that to that poor guy all the time, where I was work for him because I'm not wrong. Get her out. She's miserable. She's miserable. She doesn't want to be here. She's making us miserable. Let her go. Why are we trying to hold on to this? I don't want to work with her. So no, I definitely, I don't know. I kind of had fun in boot camp, except for the lack of sleep. And
I mean, it was fun at times, and you get to know people in a really hurried fashion. I don't know. I think
We froze up there.
yeah, same. I think we could tell stories about boot camp forever. And but I think at an hour and 10 minutes, I think
Oh my gosh.
it's been a lot of fun. I've laughed a lot, and that's my new rule of, is this a good show and should I share it? Because I think we've been very truthful, right? We haven't tried to bullshit anyone, and we've told no lies, and we've had fun telling, right? So
Telling, painting the real picture of
yeah,
what like it's not this. I think that's the misconception, is that we're always so rigid and structured, and boot camp is so like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's just, at least when I went through, I thought it was what it, but again, we're also pre 9/11. So there was no urgency at the time to do much more. It was like, just put out a decent product that can turn a wrench and we're good. So I think
well, but
I was,
they loosened things for the war, I think, because I remember hearing about how they had stress cards in boot camp later.
they gave us those. That
Who
came out
got
when I was
them?
in, but yeah, they did. Well, this is how they gave it to us. We were lined us up, we're all in front of our racks, and they came and they handed us these cards, and they said, this is a blue card. This is if you are stressed out, if you need to talk to someone, take this card, put it up in the air, and we'll come to you. And so we're looking at them like, oh, okay. And then the next thing they said was, now put it in your rack. We don't want to see that shit again. that I specifically remember that happening, getting that blue card and just like, what is this? Like, oh, I'm sad today. I thought that was weird. That, no, put that in your locker, and we don't want to see that again. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
later the game became, you can only use that card once in boot camp. And so the goal was to get you to use it as quickly as possible so that you could never use it again. And then, then it became about, like, if you still had your blue card at the end of boot camp, the level of respect that you gained for yourself, right? But because you wouldn't give it up, you got hit harder and harder and harder and harder until they realized they weren't going to get you, right? It's kind of the way bullies
I think
work.
they would have tried that with me. I think they knew, with my personality, just by the things that I was already doing, that the RDC would have raised a blue card before I would. I know I'm not doing this. I refuse to lose. No,
I am granted.
I would have been game face after that point. Like, oh, really? I bet you I could break you before you can break me. But I'm an immigrant. So what are you going to do? I've already seen my country,
Right.
by then my country's already been raided. So I lived in Guatemala in the early 80s during a wartime. So what is this guy in boot camp going to do? My mom can yell more than you. Right. Come on. So I think, of course, it's easy to say that now. Back then, it probably would have been crying with everybody else. But I think I would have been, either I would have made it to the end, or I would have made it very close, because it would have been, what can they really do to you in there? I know terrible things do happen, but not anything that I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's all psychological games, right? But shit does happen in boot. People blow knees.
Yes.
I mean, the firefighting training is all pretty well controlled, and before you ever get in there, you get taught stuff. But who knows if you have an allergy to mustard gas when you go get stuck, or not mustard gas. Everybody has an allergy to that, causes death. The stuff that they set, the tear gas they set off in the chamber.
Yes, that was my final thought right before I took the mask off. I was, because it's still, I don't know what, I'm seeing everybody coughing, and this, it looked miserable. I was further back, so I got to see enough rows go through. And I remember telling myself, Karina, this is a controlled environment. They're not, if people were dying doing this, they wouldn't be able to do it. So And then I thought, as I'm taking off the mask, I think, what if I'm the first?
I think everybody has that thought.
Like, what if I'm the first? That was my last thought.
And on that note, let's end our Co-Gnosis podcast. Thank you so much for being
Thank you for having me.
guest. And I say, where do people find you online so that they can learn more about what incredible things you're involved with?
Veteran Voyager on Instagram. That's where you'll find me, at Veteran Voyager on Instagram.
All right. Well, at Veteran Voyager on Instagram, thank you for this conversation, and I hope you're well.